Okay, so there were no questions tested in 2017 and 2016 for states of matter. In 2015, a couple were tested. Let's look into that. So, aluminum reacts with chlorine to form a white solid chloride that contains 79.7% chlorine and sublimes, which is changes state from solid to a gas without involving the liquid phase at 180 degrees Celsius. Now, the temperature is so, the sublimation temperature is so low that you understand that it must be a simple covalent molecule. And you know that aluminum chloride, it normally exists in the form of Al2Cl6 because that's the most stable version for it, and it's a solid, right? It is in fact a white crystalline solid, right? So now saying describe the structure and bonding of this compound and suggest how it explains low sublimation temperature. It's a piece of cake. You know that it's a simple covalent molecule. It's simple covalent molecule. That's the structure for it, right? And what's the bonding? The bonding is it has weak van der Waals or weak IMF. And weak van der Waals or weak IMF means what? Little energy is required to overcome the IMF. To overcome IMF. And that's it. That's the idea. And we've already done this in chapter number 2, by the way, which is chemical bonding. But it's being repeated here since there are a couple of more questions that are connected with it. Calculate the empirical formula of the chloride. You must show your working. Because the reason why he's saying that is because you would know that the empirical formula is AlCl3. Everybody knows, so that's why he's saying show your working, because he wants you to use the idea of the data that's been given to me. He's saying chlorine is what? 79.7%. So the rest, 100 minus 79.7, it's 20.3. This must be aluminum. Divide both by their ARs, 27, and this is 35.5, if I'm not wrong. What do we get? 2.25 here roughly, and what do we get here? No, sorry, not 2.25. We get 2.25 here. Okay, thank you. 2.25 here roughly, and what do we get here? It's 0.75. Divide by the smallest ratio, 0.75, 0.75. You get 1:3. So AlCl3. Done. I think at 200 degrees Celsius and 100 kilopascals, blah blah blah, contains a volume of this much. Calculate the MR. Again, we know PV equals nRT. And how do I know I have to apply PV equals nRT? Please always remember, he's given me different pressures, different temperatures, and only PV equals nRT can give me an estimate of these different temperatures and pressures, right? And he wants me to calculate the MR, so I can absolutely do that. I can convert this N into, I can formulate, I can play around with my formula instead of finding the moles first and then figuring out the MR. I could say, hey, mass equal mole times MR. So I can make mole the subject, it's mass over MR, and I can plug this right here. So PV equals mass over MR into RT, and then MR equals MRT, mass into RT divided by PV. And so what's M? M is what? What is M? M. Mass is given 1.36. 1.36. R is 8.31. T is 200 degrees Celsius, so 273 plus 200. The examiner sees your workings wherever you've done them. He sees them. So it's 473 divided by, what do you get as P and V? P is 100 kilopascals, so 100 into 10 is power 3 because converted into pascals. And V is what? 200 into 10 is power minus 6 because convert cm cube into meter cube. And I've taught you how to do this multiple times over in the first couple of videos. So what do you get your MR as? It's 267.3. 267.3, and because all the data is given to me correct to 3 sig fig, I'll write the answer correct to 3 sig fig, 263, right? 263, okay, 267, sorry, why am I saying 263? Reduce the molecular formula of this chloride at 200 degrees Celsius. So it's an aluminum chloride at 200 degrees Celsius. It's aluminum chloride, we already know it's either AlCl3 or Al2Cl6, and if you see, if you use your brain a little, you'll say, hey, if you add all of them, 27 times 2 plus 35.5 times 6, that would in fact give you 267, roughly 267. So it's Al2Cl6. Here you go, I've reduced it. We already knew it because understand that he's talking about the chloride of aluminum, and there can only be these two options as far as our syllabus is concerned. So it was very simple. The examiner wanted you to use that idea. Next question, maybe last question. Okay, great. I think the relationship between PV equals nRT can be derived from laws of mechanics by assuming ideal behavior for all gases. The graph represents the relationship between PV and P for a real gas and at three different temperatures. Now, let's see which of these temperatures is the highest and lowest. Before I even read the question, let me teach you guys the idea behind it. And this is, this idea is normally used in a lot of MCQs. So this is actually one of the most important idea that you can use. And why can't I make a line? My God. Okay, I've made a line right here. Let's use this and this line right here. So this is the line for ideal gas, obviously, because we know the PV against P graph for ideal gas is a constant. Since it depends on a constant, let's give it another color. Here you go. Sorry for my pathetic drawing, but it is what it is. Now, how do we know which particular behaves more like an ideal gas and which doesn't? Just make a dotted line. See, this is T3. Then I'll use another color for T2. Green is T2. And this is yellow is T1. Tell me something. Which of this deviates more from the ideal gas behavior? It's T1. T1 is deviating more from the ideal gas behavior. Deviating the most from the ideal gas behavior. See, this particular line, the closer the lines are with this red line, which is the ideal gas line, the ideal gas relation, the closer it is to ideal gas behavior. But the farther the lines are, the more deviating it is from the ideal gas behavior. So T1 is the most deviated from the ideal gas behavior. And what does that actually tell you about T1? If it's the most deviation, that means what? Does it have a lower temperature or higher temperature? Obviously, we know that you deviate more when, as far as temperatures are concerned, you deviate more from ideal gas behavior at lower temperatures, right? So don't look at the Y values. Okay, hey, this is higher Y value, so this is the higher temperature. No, you look at the deviation. T1 is deviating more from ideal gas behavior, which means it must be at lower temperatures, because at lower temperatures you behave more. You behave more like a real gas and less like an ideal gas. You deviate more from the ideal gas behavior, right? So T1 must be the lower temperature. Now you see, draw one line to show the ideal gas. We've already done this. State and explain with reference to T1, T2, T3 which is the lowest temperature. It's T1, and T3 is in fact the highest temperature because it's behaving most like the ideal gas, and at higher temperature gases tend to behave like ideal gas. So T1, and what's the explanation to it? The explanation, sir, is very simple, because there's the most deviation from ideal gas. Done. Now I think explain your answer in part 2 with reference to intermolecular forces of attraction. What is the reference to IMF? We know that as temperature decreases at lower temperatures, why do you behave less like ideal gas? Because as temperature decreases, the kinetic energy decreases, particles move slower and therefore closer together. And if they're closer together, what happens? The IMF becomes more significant. IMFs are more significant, and so it deviates from ideal gas behavior. Right? Sorry for writing these abbreviations, but I couldn't care less. Because the IMF becomes more significant, right? In ideal gas, we learned that there are no IMFs. That's the assumption. But if you have lower temperature, particles will come closer together and the IMF will become significant, therefore deviating most from ideal gas behavior. State and explain the effect of pressure on the extent to which a gas deviates from ideal gas behavior. So what should you do with pressure to deviate most from the ideal gas behavior? Take higher pressures, because at higher pressures, what's going to happen? It will result in the greatest deviation from ideal gas. And the reason to it is pretty simple, because you see, if you increase the pressure, the particle volume is no longer negligible. The particle volume is no longer negligible, sir. And the IMF also becomes significant. So I can say two things. The particle volume, why? Because the explanation is because the particle volume is no longer insignificant, or is significant, or is no longer negligible compared to the volume of the container. And the IMF becomes significant. Done. So you deviate more from the ideal gas, or you could even say the repulsive forces dominate the repulsive, you can even talk about repulsive forces dominating between particles, and therefore you behave more like a real gas and less like an ideal gas. You deviate more from the ideal gas, right? So IMF becomes significant between what? Between particles. Always talk about particles, my man. So IMF between particles becomes significant, or when you talk about particle volume, you say, hey, the particle volume is no longer negligible, right? Not just the volume is no longer, or the particle size is no longer negligible. Done. That's it, guys. Done and dusted. We are done with all the past papers of states of matter.